the placement of your drums is a lot more than convenience. It can affect your overall health. It can affect your dynamic and expressivity, the way you play, and it can also affect the velocity layers that you're able to access. We'll get into the layers later, but basically that means all those great sounds from subtle to loud. You might not be accessing them because of the angle that you've placed your cymbals or triggers or toms or snare at. So you really want to think of that when you're setting up your kit. It's not like an acoustic kit. Now, of course, all the elements of setting up an acoustic kit in a good way apply. You still want to have your snare equidistant between your kick drum foot and your hi-hat foot. So I start, of course, when you're building this kit with the kick, snare, hi-hat, because once you've got that where your 90% of drum playing is going to be, you can set up all the other stuff in a way that's convenient there. So you want to set it up so that you don't have to hunch over, of course. You want to watch out for your spine. I use a throne that has a back just for myself, not because you're leaning back on it, but because by using that back, you can keep your back against the throne and remind yourself that you want to try to have an erect spine when you're playing. When you don't have as much resistance like you do on an acoustic kit, and you're playing for long spaces at a time without the loud volume of it, you can forget and you can get lost. And over time, you realize you've been hunched over. It's almost like hunched over a computer keyboard, and it can be bad for you. So you really want to think about that before you set up. When you're setting up the brain, a lot of times the hi-hat's going to be freestanding on a stand. So some kits have it connected to the frame, but a lot of the more modern kits let you put it on your own hardware and your own hi-hat stand. So make sure you're setting up the brain a safe distance away from the hi-hat. I can't tell you how many broken brains I have seen with LCD screens that are cracked because of a slipped errant hi-hat hit. Now, of course, not you. But, it's going to be your cousin Jimmy you invite who goes, oh, electric drums, yeah, whoops, crack. And some of those brains are, $2,000-$3,000. It's expensive to get an LCD screen fixed on it. So even if the brain isn't meant to have it do that, I have actually taken them off the frame and put them on separate stands if I didn't like how close they were to the hi-hat. I mean, I've seen a lot of them. The hi-hat is hovering over it. So remember, set up your drums for your health first, but then you don't have to live with the manufacturers like where they decided the brain needed to be. If you have big legs and your hi-hat spread over and it's over where the brain should be, move the brain. Get that module, put it in a different spot. So kick, snare, hi-hat, all set up. My legs are really good. I'm making, close to a right angle with the floor. I'm not using too much leg on my kick drum. I can, access it with the tip of my foot to do some of the faster, more dexterous kick drumming. And then the toms and cymbals, in addition to placing them, you really have to think about the angle, even more so than when you're playing an acoustic kit. Because, depending on the brand that you're using, I'm using these Roland TD17s. They're great. They're very expressive. I want to get all that expressivity out of it. So if these cymbals were, for example, parallel with the floor, I'd only get the loudest hit every time I hit them because I'd be hitting the edge and not the actual physical part of the cymbal or the bell. And I wouldn't be able to access all that other stuff because it's parallel to the floor. So my stick would be hitting it harder than normal, even though I'm using a nice normal attack. Now, if this cymbal was bent too far, if it's angled too deep, pointed towards the floor at too drastic a slope, well, then I've got to hit it really hard to get the loudest level of velocity out of it. And what's that going to do? Well, it's going to expend more energy from myself. I'm probably going to be bending my wrist at a weird angle a lot. That's not really going to be great. But more importantly, the cymbal itself is going to wear and tear more because I'm killing it to get sound out of it. So adjusting these at a good angle, same with the toms, is going to allow you to access more dynamic range. I can't tell you how many people I've seen playing their kit and going, this is an expensive kit. I listen to the cymbal. It's loud every time I hit it. And I look at it and go, well, look at the way it's angled. You're doing nothing but hitting the rim. The part of the cymbal, the main part of the cymbal, and the rim of the cymbal often have two different samples and sounds in addition to velocity layers. So you could be triggering things that you don't mean to trigger simply because the angle of your cymbals is not right. It really takes a lot of experimentation. I mean, I like to have a nice straight arm and straight wrist when I'm attacking that cymbal. So I kind of check to make sure, okay, yeah, that feels pretty natural. That's going to be good. I don't have to do this too much or do this play on top of it too much. So check those out before you start playing so that you can eke the most dynamic range out of your instrument that you can. You know, you really want it to get every layer of velocity that you paid for, right?